Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hey guys, today's show is coming out a little bit later than usual, so thanks for being patient and still tuning in. It almost didn't come out at all. I had a pretty rough week here at the farm. On the same day that I usually record, I got home and found that my little man Jeffrey had passed away. It came out of nowhere. He was totally fine and acting himself the night before when I saw him, and I still have no idea what happened. I found him in his favorite spot, just sitting down, looking peaceful. No sign of injuries or sickness or anything like that. And even though he was our oldest chicken, he still wasn't even all that old, like not even quite 5. So this one really hurt. I know I've talked a lot about him, and I'm sure you guys could tell that even with all the trouble that little guy gave me, we still loved him so much. I've spent a lot of time since then wondering what the heck happened, what we could have done for him, and it sucks that I'll never know. It was one of those times that makes you feel like raising animals and putting in all that work and trying so hard to take care of them just isn't even worth it. And I know that's not true, and I know that the happy times can only be good if you have those tougher, sadder times in life to compare them to. But this sucked. I had to just sit there outside of his coop for a while thinking about it all, and I definitely didn't feel like doing the podcast after that. The thing that finally got me back up and ready to get back to reality was watching the little group of new chicks running around in the coop, thinking that at least we got that from him, one more little group of Jeffrey babies to keep his name going. Anyways, that's not what today's episode is about. I just wanted to share that since I won't be sharing any more stories about him jacking me up or me taking him on little solo Jeffrey trips anymore. We're going to miss him a lot. And with that having happened, it feels weird to do an episode about the little things we can do to make life a little better on our chickens. But life and the show have to go on. So today we're going to talk about a few things we can do. Some are easy. And even though most of these aren't quite in depth enough to do a full episode on, there's still important things to keep in mind that can help us take the best care of our chickens we can. So with that, we'll get right into this list of 8 things you'll want to cock-a-doodle-do for your chickens. And yes, this will probably be the last time I get to use the cock-a-doodle line in an episode title. I think I've wore it out with this one. But going to start with number 8 on the list. And the truth is, they're all equally important in their own way, depending on the weather or any other factors you might be dealing with in your yard. But number 8 is making sure your chicken's water is at the right height. This might not seem like a big deal since chickens will drink from just about anything from what I've seen. There's been plenty of times I've let them out of the coop where they have fresh, clean water available just to watch them go outside and drink from a puddle in front of the barn. And those classic gravity water feeders that are almost always sitting right on the ground when you see them in pictures. If you watch a chicken drink from those, you'll notice that when they bend down, they slurp a little in, then they have to go fully upright to let that water flow down their throat. And not that they can't get by drinking like that, but it is recommended to keep the water supply at the height of your chicken's back, or the back of the shortest chicken you have in that flock. I don't think there's any big health risk here, but since moving my water buckets up a little bit, I am seeing that those cups stay a little bit cleaner. Bringing them up just a couple of inches did help keep some of the shavings from getting kicked in there. At least it's less than they used to. And I was able to make it a little bit tougher for the mice to drink out of them by using a block that was smaller than the outside of the bucket. Okay, number 7 is checking for hidden eggs. It's bad enough that I occasionally lose eggs to hungry blue jays or curious hens, or even just one of my kids who drops them on accident when they're helping me collect. But finding an egg in Wendell's feeder, behind the hay bales, or any of the other hiding spots around the barn they use when I let them out to roam around can be a little frustrating. I think I usually find them within a few days of them being laid, and even then, I still do the float test on them to make sure they're good. But those ones usually end up going to keep Rosie's supply full. I don't like the idea of giving someone eggs when I just can't be sure how old they are, and I don't like any of them going to waste either. So, after a few months of this, I think I finally know all their secret spots, and I make sure to check those before and then after I let them out for the day. Then, if I find an egg or two in an old milk crate tucked away in the corner of the hayloft after putting them away, I know it's from that day. I'm pretty sure they'll continue to find weird places to lay their eggs. I kind of think they're messing with me on this, but no more finding 8 or 10 eggs that got laid in the tractor bucket without me knowing about it. All right, number 6, make sure your chickens have a place to wipe their beak. And I'm not talking about a little napkin dispenser, although I'll admit, the first time I noticed chickens doing this, I totally thought they were just wiping something off their face. But chickens actually do this to keep their beaks in good shape, and for good reason. Those beaks are one of the most important tools they have, so keeping them filed down and sharp is critical to their good health. And for the most part, they're going to take care of this on their own. You just have to make sure they have a place to do it. I've seen pictures of chickens where they were kept in pens that had nothing but soft dirt underneath them, really without any access to gravel or rocks or anything like that. And of course, this can be a big problem for battery cage chickens as well, because when they can't keep up on that maintenance, the tips of their beaks will eventually start to get overgrown. Usually it's the upper beak that'll start to curl down over the lower one, and in the worst case, this can lead to them struggling to eat, unable to preen themselves, and even make it tough for them to get a drink of water. If it's caught early, the beak can be trimmed up, but ideally you want them to be able to do this on their own. So if your chickens live strictly in a coop, just make sure they have some stuff around that they can use to wipe their beaks on. Rocks, bricks, anything like that will work fine. It's a small thing that can be easy to overlook, but your chickens will really appreciate you making their manicure time a little easier. All right, next up is mix it up with the mouse traps. If you have a mouse problem, then you've probably tried using as many different traps as I have, just to find that they all work in the beginning, but they also seem to drop off pretty drastically after a few days or maybe a couple weeks of being effective. Like those little bucket traps with the ladder and the trap door at the top, they work great at first, but it doesn't take long for the other mice to start to recognize that their buddies who climb that ladder never show back up. Those mice you catch leave a scent behind them that eventually tells the other mice to stay away. Maybe it's the smell of death, or maybe some pheromone they leave behind when they're scared, but eventually it's enough to keep the other mice from falling for it, leaving your traps empty and the feeder buffets wide open. But if you rotate your traps, changing up the type and the location, you should be able to continue catching mice week after week. I mean, let's not give them too much credit for being smart. They may not walk into a trap that's got a couple of dead mice in it, but if they smell peanut butter coming from a bucket they haven't seen in a while, their greed will land them right in your mouse prison. All right, next for number 4, check your feed for mites. If you've never heard of feed mites, well, you're in the same boat I was just a few months ago. Then I saw this article written by someone who ended up having to throw away a huge stockpile of their animal feed because it had become infested. Now, if you find that you have grain mites in or around your feed, it's probably not your fault. Most likely you unknowingly brought them home from the feed store as they hitched a ride in a bag that had been exposed to some moisture, or maybe sat around too long and started to break down and get dusty, which are just the conditions these nasty little things thrive in. Now, even though grain mites don't go and attack your chicken's body directly the way other mites do, they can still have a negative impact on your flock's overall health. Plus, who wants a bunch of nasty mites around, of any kind? These things will get into your animal's feed, set up camp, and just start helping themselves, turning your stockpile, potentially hundreds of dollars of feed, into a pile of trash. Once these mites tap into your feed supply, they start eating up all the nutrients, leaving a pile of dust that'll no longer supply your chickens with what they need. The good news is, it's pretty easy to prevent this from happening. Just make sure your feed is kept dry, check it for mold, any kind of water intrusion. or look for that gray dust that they leave in their wake when you're grabbing bags of feed at the store. And then do your best to keep your feed stored in a dry place. Sealed up trash cans work great for this, or even just keeping it up and off of the ground. Just do the best you can to keep your storage containers clean and dry, and then checking for those signs. The gray dust, a really bad smell, or if you've got good eyes, you can look real close into the feed for some movement. Those mites are small, but if you've got an infestation of it, you'll be able to see them milling around in the dust at the bottom of your feed containers. Okay, number 3, we're talking about decoys. We all have to deal with predators to some extent. Whether you live out in the sticks and have to ward off coyotes and bobcats, or in the city where raccoons, skunks, or hawks are trying to make a meal of your flock, decoys like fake owls, scarecrows, or even shiny reflectors can help to keep those animals away. But it's not always enough to just set them up and then forget about them. Wild animals are really good at getting familiar with their surroundings. And a scarecrow that just sits in the same place day after day just doesn't keep its scary features for very long. Once those predators get used to seeing them and realize they pose no danger, they become about as useless as the 9/11 committee's official report. You've got to get out there and move those guys around from time to time. I've got a buddy who takes this to another level. He likes to pose as scarecrows, which are these Halloween mannequins that he's repurposed, into questionable positions that are good for a laugh, but also good at keeping those wild animals guessing. With the owl or coyote decoys, you want to move those things around, make it seem like they're always in a different place. With the scarecrow, you can dress them up, change the colors, or even use an old Halloween mask on them. And that can be a fun thing to get kind of creative with. And it'll help keep those chicken hunters worried that if they come too close, that scarecrow that looks like Jason Voorhees is going to make them pay. I had some alien invaders for a haunted house I did a couple of years ago. And after Halloween, I posted those guys up around the barn for a little bit until the rain pretty much destroyed them. I don't know if they scared off any raccoons, but they definitely gave me a jump a couple of times when I was down there late at night. Okay, number 2 is one that a lot of us will be dealing with here pretty soon: mixing new chickens into your flock. Every year, as spring starts to roll around, I tell myself, I don't need any more chickens. The Silkies are going to hatch a bunch anyways. Don't go buy any more chicks. And then I still do. Which means, every year, I have to find a way to raise those chicks to maturity, or at least pretty close to, separate from the rest of the flock. And that part's been fine. I have a grow-out pen for them to live those 12 weeks or so after they move out of the brooder, because I want to give them a chance to grow up to be at least close in size to the rest of the flock. It wouldn't be fair to stick them in that big coop with the rest of them when they're still developing. The flock's always been pretty good about accepting new birds in time, but that initial move-in period does come with some hard times for the new chickens. They always start off at the bottom of the pecking order, which comes with some pecks, and if they're too small and any of your established hens are a little too rough on them, they do stand a chance of getting hurt. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's usually the hen that was at the bottom of the pecking order that gives them the hardest time. So whether you do the sneak them in the coop at night trick, and that's usually how I add new chickens to the coop, or you just toss them in there and let them figure things out, the important thing is that you give them a chance to grow up first and really come to size. That gives them the best chance to mix in without getting hurt. It can be sad enough just to watch them get shunned by the other girls in the beginning, having to take the last spot on the perch, getting chased away from treats or the feeder. In fact, I usually put an extra feeder in there too for that first week or so. That way they can still get a bite when they're hungry if the other birds are chasing them off the main feeder. So I try to wait till they're at least 16 weeks to mix them in. I've been raising chickens for a few other people I know the last couple years who wanted more layers in their flock but didn't want to deal with raising them. And as much as I want to get those chickens to their new home, I always tell people I insist on keeping them till they're at least 14 weeks. And even then, I recommend that they try to keep them separated in the coop for a little bit, just to give them a chance to mingle and meet each other first. And hopefully they don't end up getting too beat up in that first week. We spend all that time taking care of them when they're little, cleaning up those poop butts and everything. We got to do our best to help them make that transition at the end. Okay, last one, is make sure you keep some basic first aid and supplements on hand for when they get sick or hurt. I know I did a full episode on this back, I don't know, over a year ago, but every week I see so many people in chicken Facebook groups that end up with a sick or hurt chicken asking what they can do or what they need. And I get it, we're all going to get sick or hurt chickens. That's not anyone's fault. And that hits kind of close to home for me right now. But you don't want to find yourself in a spot where you find a sick chicken late at night when everything's closed and you can't do anything to help that bird until the stores open up. You can't be ready for everything, but having basic first aid stuff like antiseptic sprays, blood clot powders, bandages, stuff like that, along with some selenium, vitamin B12, and Corid, that'll give you the opportunity to help one of your chickens out in an emergency right away. Things can happen when you least expect it, and sometimes you only get a small window of time to help before it's too late. So we don't want to miss those opportunities when we do get them. I wish I would have had that chance to help Jeffrey out. This one's really going to hurt for a while. This episode is dedicated to him. Rest in peace, my little dude. Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate you all giving me a place to talk about this kind of stuff. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Till then, take care.